Hello, adorable charms. You're most welcome to Everything Literature, where you get to learn about everything concerning drama, prose, the most inspiring poetry. Take a seat and enjoy the class. Once again, you're most welcome. My name is Olamide. I am a certified educationist and also a literary analyst. I must say, a literary enthusiast. I love everything literature, everything about literature. I love it. Okay, so if you're new here, that means something about literature that you here. Do well to subscribe, and if you're a returning subscriber, like thank you so much. You're the real deal. So here at Everything Literature, we get to explore the world of literature, talk about drama, prose, and poetry. Okay, without further ado, so let's delve into the class. Before the invention of printing press, in Europe, prose started out in the form of what we can refer to as prose poetry, that is the likes of the Epic of Gilgamesh. After the invention of printing, prose finally took flesh as an offspring in the form of serial publications. That was how writers such as Charles Dickens, Emily Bronte, etc. were able to get their works published. In Africa, prose literature started more as folk tales before literacy came as an offshoot of Western civilization in the 20th century. For today's class, our focus will be on the types of prose fiction. And actually, we have two basic types. Two basic types are fiction and non-fiction. We've already discussed in one of our previous classes, but for today's class, we need to just have a recap. Fiction is from a Latin word fictum or ficto, which simply means the act of making, creating, or molding. This involves all imaginative works, that is, works being imagined and being created by the author. Okay, so these works include the following. We have the novel, we have the novella, and we have the short stories. So for the novel, this is a full-length imaginative prose that is extended in narration and assembles many characters and a wide range of human experiences. It has an elaborate plot and a complex characterization. Any story above 40,000 words is considered a novel, although the minimum length for a novel is 50,000. For example, Buchi Emechita's Second Class Citizen, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man can all be classified as a novel or classified under novel. Okay? The next is the novella or the novelette. I intentionally combined these two together just to save us time. The little difference between the two is just in the area of word count. So this one is a shorter form of the novel with a less complicated plot and characterization. Word count for novelette is 7,500 to 19,000, and for novella is 19,000 to 40 or 50,000 words. For example, Cyprian Quincy's The Drummer Boy, The Metamorphoses by Franz Kafka, classified under the novella. Okay, and a short story. This is a work of fiction which centers on one or more major characters. It has an artificial pattern of plot, thoughts, and actions of characters. Its narration of events is usually simple, and the story itself is full of suspense, surprise, and expectation. Word count for short stories is between 1,500 to 7,500. Well, anything less than 1,500 can be classified as flash fiction. So flash fiction and short stories can just work hand in hand. Okay, a good example of this is Chinua Achebe's Girls at War, one of the short story published by Chinua Achebe. Okay, so the difference between the novel, the novella, the novelette, and the short story or flash fiction has to do with the word count, the subject matter treated, the complexity in handling concepts such as unity of time and place, conflict development, what we mean by conflict development has to do with the idea of subplots or story within story. Okay, so aside the novel, the novella, the short story, another one I'll quickly chip in is what we call the fable. Although we'll talk about the fable very much later. Now, this is a story. Fable is a story which is a moral lesson, but has its setting and characterization in the animal world. Examples are stories of the tortoise in African oral literature. Okay, so fable are stories with animals as characters, and the intention is to teach moral lessons. Now, let's move to the second category under the types of prose. This is non-fiction. Non-fiction just simply means a story in its original or true form with the actual characters, events, and experience. That means there's really the characters, the events, the experiences are not product of imaginations. Okay, they actually happen to real people. So we have the first one to be biography. Biography is a non-fictional prose. It is a full account of a person's life and personality written by another person, recreated in tune with the writer's motive. Biography in literature is not the life story of a person read at church, at a funeral, or memorial service. It is a literary art in its own merit. So we must not confuse biography to be what we call epitaphs or tributes being read at funerals. No, just has to do with the fact that I want to write a story about my life, but I'm not just really interested in, I'm not really a writer, I don't have time. Then I can just call someone, possibly through one medium or the other. I get to tell the person all I want documented, and the person writes for me. So examples of this, we have Izego by Olusegun Obasanjo, and just to mention but a few. Okay, so number 2, we have autobiography. Autobiography is like the opposite of biography. Now, this is a biography of a person written by himself. So I have a story about my life and I decide to write it down myself instead of employing someone else, okay, to write for me. It is normally a large compilation of accounts of oneself taken from one's private diary or records. Example, we have Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela, in the book Long Walk to Freedom, decided to tell us about his life story, when he was born, how he was born, where he grew up, what got him into politics, and how he became in prison in Robben Island for like 27 years of his life, and the likes. So that's been written by Nelson Mandela, and the story therein is about Nelson Mandela. That's autobiography. Then we have the third one, which is semi-autobiography. This is equally an autobiography in which the writer disguises the real names of the personalities involved by substituting imaginary or fictional ones, so as to make the writing look more like fiction. An example of this is Camerali's The African Child, and also in Buchi Emechita's Second Class Citizen. So you wouldn't know that maybe the author are actually talking about themselves, okay? Because they would pick up a different name. For instance, in Buchi Emechita's Second Class Citizen, the character of Ada is actually Buchi herself. Okay, so with that being said, we can talk about some other subtypes under this, related to this, okay, related to fiction or prose fiction. So we have the one called the adventure story. We have another one called the thriller or detective, or the thriller or detective. The technical name, we may get to come across that in one of our advanced classes. Okay, so another one is the romance And the last one I would like to talk about is the Bildungsroman. I can remember I actually wrote a poem about this Bildungsroman concept. Okay, so what do we mean by the adventure? This type of prose usually concentrates on the adventures of young people and the excitement and escapades in bid to understand themselves and exercise momentary freedom from adult control. So it's more or less like an adventure on its own. A very good example of this is Mark Twain's The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Okay, and a very native one, very close to us in Africa, is Kola Olunadipe's The Adventures of Souza. Okay, so The Adventures of Souza is one of the adventure novels. Then we have the thriller or the detective. This type concentrates on fast-paced action and suspense. Usually, there is a crime, an attempt by the law to unravel the perpetrators. This usually results in a trail of suspense and mystery. This category includes the work of Edgar Allan Poe, okay, and in most cases we have thrillers always been adapted into movies. The concept of adaptation comes in most cases because they are usually best appreciated when people get to see them on screen, but they come in the form of prose at first. Okay, so we have the next one to be the romance. Now please, we must learn to, as literature students, we must learn to differentiate between the romance and the concept of romantic. Okay, a romantic concept is not the same thing as romance. Okay, so romance, this type of prose appeals to young people. Its action have to do with the sensuous, the sensational, and kind of amorous activities of young people. Okay, so just talking about love life between people compared to romantic, which has to do with more about nature and the likes. Okay, so the last one, just as said, is the Bildungsroman. The Bildungsroman is a novel that traces the growth and development of a hero from childhood through education to young adulthood. Many novels falls into this category. For example, we have Chukwuemeka's The Potter's Wheel, Camerali's The African Child, and Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, the character of Peep. Peep getting to learn as he was actually growing. Okay, so with this being said, before we end the class, I would just like to quickly chip this in. The forms by which prose literature are usually expressed, the way most of all these literary texts that are in prose form are presented to us. Okay, we have the ones that are presented in the epistolary form. We have another one we call the fable, and we have another one called the caricature. Then the fourth one is the allegory, and the fifth is the diary. Okay, so let me quickly say something about these 5 forms by which prose literature can be presented. Now, the epistolary simply means letter. Okay, this is the presentation of the prose work in the form of a letter or exchange of letters, like the epistles in the Bible. Okay, the Bible was not actually written in the verse form that we observe most of the books in the Bible to be written, but it's just for the sake of easy memorization. That's why most of all these scriptures are into verses. Matthew chapter 1, verse 2, thereabout. Okay, so when stories are written in form of letters as such, then we have them called epistolary. Okay, very good example of this is Mariam Abba's So Long a Letter. It's one of the most common, even the commonest example you can always think of when you're talking about epistolary. Then the second one is the fable. Okay, the second way by which a prose literature is usually written or presented is the fable, or what we call the fabula. Okay, this style has already been explained earlier, just as I said. Okay, but one thing you have to know is that in fable, human experiences are presented through the animal world. So we have animals as the characters. Human activities are carried out through animal characters. and situations. Very good example of fable, classical work is George Orwell's Animal Farm. Animal Farm, no, thumbs up. A good example of fable. Now, number 3, manner by which, or form by which prose literature is usually presented is what we call the caricature. Now, this is a literary work that is out to make fun of a person by exaggerating his prominent features while still maintaining some likeness to the original. So, we see this being done by artists most times, whereby in newspapers they draw the caricature format of a prominent person. Okay, so in prose as well, we can adopt the concept of caricature, whereby you write a literary work just to make fun of a person by exaggerating, okay, and still maintaining some likeness to the original. So the 4th one, which is the allegory. Allegory is a literary narrative in which the characters and general background represent abstract concepts and moral qualities. Now, in allegory, we have what we call the surface level meaning and we have the deeper level meaning. So there are always 2 meanings in allegory. That's why we call it allegorical work. So is that clear now? So it means there is a surface meaning, what you can think of on the surface, and there is a deeper meaning. That is when you look at it critically, when you think about it deeply, there is a deeper meaning attached to it. Okay, so in other words, we assess the world of literature, its characters and situation through the sense impressions of the character maintaining a diary. Now, in allegory, there's usually a surface meaning and there's always a deeper meaning. Very good example is John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. The Pilgrim's Progress. Okay, so we have a character of Christian, yes, I suppose, going through different things. Now, the name of the character himself is Christian. On a deeper level, we can see this character to be representing the Christ followers who are also called Christians. Okay, so the 5th one, as we get to wrap up the class, is the diary. Now, this is a literary narrative written as a record of notes and impressions of the main characters about events and situations around him, recorded in a book. In other words, we assess the world of the novel, its characters and situations through the sense impressions of the character maintaining the diary. So if you decide to write about your daily occurrence in a book now, then we'll call it a diary. Okay, and when you're writing that down, it's usually presented in the first person point of view. This is a method by which the writer distances himself from the actions of the story. Okay, so there's a way whereby when you make use of a diary, you can, the author, get to distance himself from the action of the story. We wouldn't even know maybe the incident is actually fictional or non-fictional. Okay, so a good example of this is one of the ones I've read, come across, is Mungo Betty's The Poor Christ of Bomba. Mungo Betty's, yes, The Poor Christ of Bomba. Okay, so with this, we've come towards the end of the class. We've got to talk about the 2 major types of prose literature, fiction and non-fiction, and we've discussed the different subtypes that we have under them. Under fiction, we have the novel, and we talk about the number of words that makes up what we can classify as a novel, the novella, the short story, and we talked about what actually differentiate between these 3, that is the word count, the subject matter, and the complexities in handling some concepts such as conflict development and unity of time and place, story within story, etc. Then under non-fiction, we talked about biography, autobiography, semi-biography, and some other types such as the adventure story, the thriller, the romance, which is actually different from romantic concepts, then the Bildungsroman. Okay, before we now talked about the forms by which prose literature is usually expressed, we have the epistolary, the fable, the caricature, the allegory, and the diary. I hope you really enjoyed the class. Hope to see you in our next class. Do well to just go through the exercises. Okay. Thank you.